All right, so up next, we're going to be looking at both of the different alternatives and what they would do. So, alternative A, which is considered the no action alternative, the NRCS will not provide financial or technical assistance to these farmers. And the NRCS will still provide assistance upon request, just like they're currently doing, but it will not be blanket coverage for everyone. And then alternative B, which is the proposed action, the NRCS will provide federal funding for the assistance for these farmers, and the conservation practices will address the resource concerns within each state. So it's gonna be broken down a little more. It's not just a general here you get money. It's broken down for the needs of each state. Up next, we're going to be looking at the impacts of these two actions. So with the no action, erosion rates will stay the same or increase with time in the cropland. Pastures will have low forage production rates. Runoff from manure and wastewater will increase with time, and the existing concerns with wildlife will continue. So basically, the no action, just like how we've been seeing in our history, things are going to progressively get worse as we continue to farm these lands. And then the proposed action, which will put changes in to change the direction of the way the land is going, there will be reduced erosion and enhanced productivity in the cropland. It will improve the forage quality for the livestock production in the pastures. The wastewater will be stored and treated. Wildlife habitat will be restored and replanted. So obviously, just like I said, this will change the course of the way we're moving now with farming. So here's a little insight onto why alternative B was chosen. There is no discussion in the EA to why alternative B was chosen. But a couple things to think about. Alternative B would improve the quality of the land in the areas where it is suffering. So like I said earlier, it's not just a blank or it's a blanket coverage. Everybody has access to this funding, but it's not a one size fits all approach. So if there's a particular issue in one area, that issue will be resolved in that area and not every area. And then alternative B will teach farmers the conservation practices to be passed down with the land. Farmers will be less reliant on federal assistance when their practices switch to the conservation farming. And water quality will improve in the nearby areas as there is less nitrogen and phosphorus runoff from the waste. So, like I said, there was no discussion of this in the EA, but all of these points can be found in the EA. They just didn't have a section to discuss them. So now, to branch off of that, some things that we intend to change. We recommend adding a few more alternatives to the EA. A couple of them would be giving a fraction of the funding. They don't generally specify how much money they plan on giving, so it could be half of what they plan on giving or a quarter. Another one would be more heavily focusing more in heavily degraded areas. So this would be like Iowa, where most of the wetlands have been removed and switched to farmlands. We could focus a little more on the water for that. And then to go along with that, focusing on just one aspect of alternative B. So one of these, just like I was saying, like in Iowa, with how there's no wetlands, we could focus more on how we're going to preserve the wetlands that we have now. So that could be stopping runoff and nutrient leaching. And then we could include specific mitigation strategies. So one of these could be, we all know the buffer strip law in Minnesota. We could widen those buffer strips to reduce soil runoff into the ditches. There has been studies that show that this does work. Removing drainage systems to lessen subsurface runoff. And then the final thing that we said we could change is move Appendix A after the title page and before the table of contents. So Appendix A, it goes through all of the abbreviations and acronyms that are used throughout the EA. And personally, when I was reading the EA, it was a little confusing until I got to Appendix A. So we said this will provide readers with the knowledge of the acronyms used throughout the EA, which I feel is very important. Otherwise, one can get lost very quickly. So does this action warrant a FONSI or an EIS? If we follow through with alternative B, we will be bettering the environment. We will be changing the course of how we're moving. Alternative B is set to minimize the impacts of alternative A. Landowners will receive technical and financial assistance from the NRCS to implement conservation practices. Alternative B will reduce erosion, redirect water flow, and enhance crop production. This minimizes potential harm to water quality. And from all the things that we talked about in this presentation, we have decided that it would be best to have a FONSI written for this action. And then if you have any questions, feel free to email us them. We will answer them to the best of our ability. Thank you.